This is lesson number 13 from Metal Technology. It's over grinding. If you need to follow along in your book, it's in chapter 23, pages 343 to page 361. As always, if you need to stop this presentation at any time, feel free to do so, to write down your descriptors, your images, anything that you need. So we're going to talk about grinding, and the picture over here on the right, the top right, shows somebody that is using what's called an angle grinder. So this guy over here on this side is grinding down whatever this part is. I'm not sure what the part is, but as he's grinding it, notice how there's a bunch of sparks. So we can tell that this is a ferrous metal, which means it's a metal that contains iron. When you are grinding ferrous metal, it's going to almost always spark. So you got to be prepared for that. You got to make sure that you take into account that when these sparks and stuff start flying like this, you need to make sure that you're watching where you're aiming them. You don't want to aim them at any flammable materials or anything like that. A bench grinder is what's pictured down here. This is very similar to the grinders that we have in our class. The bench grinder is going to have both a fine cut and a rough cut wheel. So the two different wheels here are on there for a reason. Not only does it balance the machine out, but it also allows for you to do rough grinding on one side and smooth grinding on the other side. So this grinding machine is mounted directly to a bench or a table. The grinders that you're going to use in this class are pedestal grinders. So the picture up here on the top right, this is an example of actually a really large pedestal grinder. Ours don't have the wheels as big as this. Ours are more along this size with the wheels. They do have two sides, again, one's for rough cutting, one's for smooth cutting. This machine is fitted on a base. So these parts here, this part is the grinder itself, and down here is the base that it's just bolted to. So we've got two of these in our Metal Tech classroom that we're going to be able to use to grind. And what we're going to do is we're going to grind our screwdriver blade down to shape. That's going to be what we're using our grinders for in this class. One of the most important parts of the grinder is something called a tool rest. The tool rest is this guy right here. So this is where your project is going to actually sit. You want to make sure that your project is sitting on this tool rest as you're moving kind of back and forth, side to side on the face of the grinding wheel. If this distance right here where the laser pointer little cursor thing is greater than a quarter of an inch, we have a big problem, because what can happen is your project can be pulled down in here, and we don't want that to occur. So we need to make sure that this is set really close to this grinding wheel. So when you do go to work on your project, make sure that you're checking and looking to see that this tool rest is close. Again, your project sits on the tool rest, and you're going to just move it back and forth, side to side. If a grinding wheel gets a groove in it for any reason, or a chunk is taken out of the grinding wheel, maybe somebody's project slipped, we'll have to redress the grinding wheel. And what that means is we're going to take this tool here and we'll run it across the grinding wheel. What happens is these teeth here are going to chew down your grinding wheel, and it will chew it down to where it's nice and level and smooth. So this is the tool that's used to clean or resharpen. A lot of the times you'll hear people talking about reconditioning or resharpening a grinding wheel. That's what this thing does, the wheel dresser. Grain size is directly related to the size of how big these little abrasive material pieces are. So you notice that when you have grain structure, this is a really rough grit of sandpaper. This thing right here looks very, very rough because it's a very low grit. This is probably about a 40 grit sandpaper, maybe even less. So it directly relates to the diameter of the individual abrasive particles. So if you think of a piece of sandpaper, just picture little bitty rocks on that sandpaper, and that's essentially what the abrasive material is on each piece of sandpaper. So So to wrap up lesson 13, there's a couple of central questions. Number one, what will abrading operations allow us to do that other operations will not? So abrading, again, from the previous lessons, comes from the word abrade, which means to rub off. So think about why we would be using an abrading operation. What's that going to allow us to do that other operations won't? And then, have you ever seen or performed a grinding operation before? If you have not performed a grinding operation yet, you definitely will when you make your screwdriver blade in metal technology class with us. So if you've used a grinder, an angle grinder, a bench grinder, a pedestal grinder, something like that before, make sure that you jot that down and give us an explanation.